Hello students, Professor Benavides. Let's go over part 2 of chapter 6 on dictionaries. We're going to be zeroing in on looping through a dictionary. Now before we get started here, I want to go ahead and plug the cheat sheets that the author has. And I want to go ahead and show that to you. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Got this on a separate screen. And so as you can see, I'm pretty sold on these cheat sheets. So last time we talked about what a dictionary is, how to create one, how to get the values associated with it, you know, how to modify values. It's kind of like get and change, right? You know, get and access and mutate. We also talked about removing key value pairs. So now we're going to talk about looping through a dictionary. As you can see, here we have a summary of what we're going to be going through in detail in just a minute. So I wanted to show you how these cheat sheets are an excellent way of seeing the code that we're going to be going through in just a minute. Okay. All right. So looping through a dictionary. Why loop through dictionaries? A single Python dictionary can contain just a few key value pairs or millions of pairs. Wow, right? Because a dictionary can contain large amounts of data, Python lets you loop through a dictionary. How can you loop through a dictionary? So dictionaries can be used to store information in a variety of ways. Therefore, several different ways exist to loop through them. Number one, you can loop through all of a dictionary's key value pairs. We're going to learn what method that is in just a minute. Number two, we can loop through just the keys. Well, there's a specific method for that as well. And number three, we can loop through its values. Okay? So let's start off with looping through all key value pairs. And this is done with the items method. So let's look at our first little example here. And on line 5, we define our dictionary to store username, first name, and last name. And, you know, I went ahead and looked up Enrico Fermi. I'm pretty impressed. I put the Wikipedia on there for you. He was a physicist long time ago, and he was associated with the Manhattan Project, with Oppenheimer, and linked to Albert Einstein as well. So if you want to learn more about Enrico, go ahead and copy that little link on there. I think this was just a little quirky thing that your author did. He created a dictionary to store username, first name, and last name, and he ended up putting a physicist name in here, a real person's name. You know, so I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't think it was his neighbor. So a very important person in history. But anyway, so in line 5, we define our dictionary called user_0, in which we have a series of key value pairs. The key in this case is username. It's all string data, and the value is E, and then his last name, Ephraim. And then the first name key is first, and then the value is Enrico. Last name is Fermi. So the style of this is dictionary is key value pairs. They're separated by commas, and the key is separated from the value by means of a colon. And we're putting the last colon on there to be ready for the next one. This was what we covered in part 1. A little review. So then we go on to line 12, and this is what this chapter is about. We're going to loop through the dictionary using a for loop. And we're going to utilize the items method. So the syntax for this is dictionary, which is an object, dot items. So it's object dot member, items is a method and it returns the key value pairs. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to say for key comma value in dictionary.items colon, what do we want to have done? We want to print the key and we want to print the value. So key and value are accessed here by means of these two variables, key and value. And it doesn't matter what you call these. You could call them K and V, but this is really not appropriate at all. Later on, the author of your book is going to be telling you that you really should be using descriptive names that are related to the key value pairs. So it's kind of like lazy to just put in K and V. He just wants you to just make sure that you know that you can. I mean, when I first came into Python, to tell you, true confessions, coming in from a C-based language, like Java or something like that, I was using I and J, and so yes, I'm guilty of many inappropriate conventions, and I'm slowly making my way to writing code that is compliant with Pepe and other conventions for Python, and you should too. So if you're coming from another language, you've got to get it out of your system. You've got to get it out of your system. Let me run this one. Get those old habits out of your system. Okay, so coming back to the topic at hand, we're using a for loop. And the for loop uses two variables. The first one represents the key. The second variable represents the value. Then you use the keyword in, and then you use the dictionary.items format. And then we're just using an F string to go ahead and print the value and the key. Okay. So let me go ahead and show you the output. So as you can see, I have one loop up here, and then I'll loop through it again. I ended up looping through it again just to show you that it really doesn't matter what we call these variable names. Yeah, it could have been I and J, but that's not considered, the Python conventions. We want to have descriptive names that represent, the dictionary. So we would use something like, first name, last name, right? That would be more appropriate. But of course, K and V is a lot less typing. I'm with you on that, But what's being introduced here is what's making the magic is the items method. And that's what we need to zero in right here on, is the items method. So it's dictionary.items. That allows us to iterate through the, using this loop to iterate through the key value pairs. And we're getting both. We're getting the key and the value. Another example here that uses descriptive names on here is, I think it's a better example on here. And let me go ahead and run it so the output won't be confusing you on here. So here we have a situation where we've got a dictionary on line 4, and then we're going to go ahead and use the loop on line 12. Notice how we've got two variables, one called name and one called language. So the keywords here are for, name, comma, language, in, which is another keyword, favorite underscore languages, which is the dictionary dot items. So items is the method that allows us to access the keys and the values. Then what we do on line 13 is we have an F string that accesses these two variables, and we access them in placeholders in the formatted string. We access the name variable, and then we access the language variable. Notice how these two are in the singular format, okay? Whereas our dictionary is in the plural format because of the content that it contains, right? So Jen's favorite language is Python, Sarah's favorite language is C, Edward's favorite language is Ruby, and Phil's favorite language is Python, okay? So descriptive names is the key idea here, and it makes it easier to see what the print call is doing. That's why we want to go ahead and use descriptive names when we're using the items um, method. Okay, so looping through all the keys in the dictionary is our next topic. So instead of working with all the key value pairs, let's zero in on, let's say we want to deal with only the keys. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this so we can have separate output on here. Okay, so line 4, I go ahead and define my dictionary. And then on line 12, I loop through it. Notice how in this particular case, I'm using the keys method. Okay, so so on line 12, we've got keyword 4. Name is the variable that we're creating to iterate through all of the names in this dictionary, right? And the dictionary's name is favorite languages and then keys. So the key in this particular case is name. So when we look up the key, we get the value. So in other words, what's Jen's favorite programming language? Python. What's Sarah's favorite programming language? C. What's Edward's favorite programming language? Ruby, etc. Okay, and then I just throw in a little print statement in line 15 to separate these two loops so that I go ahead and show you here, very important fact that's being made here is that when you loop through keys, the keys method is the default. So looping through keys is the default. So if I don't specify anything, so if I just say for, name, in, favorite underscore languages, without the keys method here, I get the same result. I didn't format it. I didn't format it because I was just wanted to make sure that we understand that line 12 and line 18 are equivalent, and that of course I could have just copied line 13 again, but I didn't, just so that we could, I guess, see the distinction a little bit better. So why use the key method? The key method is useful when you don't need to work with all of the values in the dictionary. Looping through the keys is actually the default behavior when looping through a dictionary. So you can choose to use the keys method explicitly if it makes your code easier to read, or you can omit it if you'd like. All right? So how to use the key method to access the values associated with any key we care about. That's our next section on here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the code first of all. A little lengthy because it covers several ideas here. So I'm going to go top to bottom here. We have our dictionary defined on line 5. In addition to a dictionary, which utilizes these curly brackets, we're going to go ahead and define a list. So we have our dictionary in line 5 that is the result of polling. We had a poll and we say, hey, what's your favorite programming language? So we found out that Python is Jen's favorite language, C is Sarah's favorite language, etc. And now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a list, and we do that with square brackets. So it's a list, it's not a dictionary. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and create a loop, right? And we're going to loop through the dictionary, and we're going to say, hey, hi, and then, hi, Jen, right, with a capital J. And then we're going to perform a test embedded. So the if statement is embedded in the repetition construct. So on line 16, we have repetition. And embedded, we have, on line 18, we have a selection construct in which we perform a check or a test to see if name is in friends. So if name is in friends, we'll then go ahead and then we'll determine the favorite language. Okay. So we do that by, how do we do that? We go ahead and like we learned before, we access that by saying dictionary, square brackets name. That allows us to access the favorite language. And in this particular case, I'm going to assign it. This is an assignment statement on line 19. I'm going to assign it to a variable called language. And then on line 20, I'm creating a formatted string and I'm using language in a placeholder. Okay. So what's happening, here is that, yes, we are iterating through the keys, but we can also access the value associated with the key, okay, by determining the current, by utilizing the current key. Okay, by utilizing the current key, we can access the value. So what we do is we perform a test here and we say, if that name is in friends, we'll say, hey, I keep wanting to say, hey, Bob or Jen, I see you love whatever language. Let's go ahead and run that. I think. So it says, hi, Jen, hi, Sarah. And since Sarah is in friends, we say, Sarah, I see you love seeing. But the next, the first time, let's start again from the beginning here. The first time I go through this, name is Jen. So is Jen inside of friends? No. So it just simply says, hi, Jen. Got me? Then it loops through again and it picks Sarah. Is Sarah inside of friends? Yes. That is a true Boolean condition, right? In that case, Sarah, or favorite underscore languages using Sarah, allows me to, the key, Sarah, gives me the value, which is C. So I go ahead and assign C to language. And then language is a variable that I use in the formatted string on line 20. Okay. Then on line 24, I perform another test with an if statement. I say, if Aaron, not in favorite languages dot keys, then print Aaron, please take our poll. So in this particular case, we say, Aaron, please take our poll. It comes out because Aaron, if Aaron is not in favorite languages, is Aaron on here? No, right? Just to give you an idea, if I put Jen in here, it doesn't say that, right? It doesn't say, well, like, what is that? Jen, please take our poll, right? And notice how I do the test with lowercase. Okay. So then it says, Aaron, please fill our poll. Why? Because she did not take the poll. Remember, the people who get inside of the dictionary were people that were polled as to what is their favorite language. We only have 4 people that answered. So we're going through each one of these and then we're saying, hey, if Aaron is not in the list, and it's kind of like a little contrived way of learning how to utilize the not in keyword. Okay, so we have an if condition here. We studied conditional statements, and what we're showing off here is the not in. Okay. So the keys method isn't just for looping. It actually returns a list of all of the keys. And if the last if statement here simply checks if Aaron is in the list. Because she's not, a message is printed inviting her to take the poll. That's what's happening here. So this checks to see if Aaron is, if Aaron is in here, right? It's not part of the loop. Okay. So the key, or if we're trying here, the keys method is just not to be used in loops. It can be used in an if statement as well. Okay. So key points here is using the keys method. You can access the values associated with any key you care about inside the loop by using the current key. And that's what we did here on line 19. We used the current key. Name, whatever that current one, that gave us the value, the language. Okay. And then you ended up printing a message, an associated message. And but when the name matches one of our friends, we display a special method, right? A special greeting. In this case, if it's one of our special friends, you know, if name in friends, this is a test. What we'll do is we'll say, you know, hi Phil, right? It said hi Phil. And then underneath that, we'll say, Phil, I see you love Python. Okay. Next section on here is looping through a dictionary's key in a particular order. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and use the sorted method, right? I believe so. Yeah, sorted method. So let's just go top to bottom. Of course, on line 3, we have the definition of our dictionary. And on line 11, I just do a loop. And of course, it's unsorted. It's the original list. Let me just go and run this. No, I'll come back to this. So after I loop through this, I go ahead and use the sorted function. Okay. Notice I didn't say method. It is the sorted function, and it returns a copy of the keys in order. So we go through the loop and we say for name in, and what we're doing here is we're passing the dictionary.keys to sorted. Sorted is then returning a copy of the keys in order that we're going to be using to loop. And then in the next one here, I just went ahead and I just wanted to make sure you know this sorted method does not modify the original dictionary. So I just go ahead and print it out again on here. So as you can see here, I print out, you know, I go through our first loop, and it shows Jen, Sarah, Edward, Phil. Those are in order as entered into the dictionary. And then I pass this to the sorted method. So I pass the name of the dictionary.keys. So what does it do? It sorts on the key. So now we have Edward, Jen, Phil, and Sarah. And then I go ahead and do a loop again. And the last loop is the same as the first one, in which it may have been apparent to you because I'm saying it's a copy. It's not the original. The original dictionary has not been modified, and I proved that by printing it out again. Okay. So an important thing to note here is we're dealing with the sorted function, and it gives us a copy of the keys in order. So this for statement is like other for statements, except that we've wrapped the sorted function around the dictionary keys method. This tells Python to list all keys in the dictionary and sort that list before looping through it. The output shows everyone who took the poll with the names displayed in order. Okay, so let's talk about now looping through all values. And see how it's kind of neat how we've taken this in steps. We went through all key value pairs. Then we went ahead and looped through just the keys. And now we're going to talk about looping through just the values. Pretty good, very well organized book, you know. So let's go ahead and take a look at this next example, you know, on here. So we're going to look about the values. Oh, and I don't think that one is this one here. So let me go ahead and go to the next one here. This is values. I'm not sure why I got this one on here. Favorite language. Oh, just to look up stuff. So what we want to do is we want to talk about looping through all values. So in this particular case, we're using the values method. So when it's associated with an object, it's a method. When it's not associated with an object, it's a function. Okay? So how do you loop through values? If you're primarily interested in the values that a dictionary contains, you can use the values method to return a list of values without any keys. So here we have that same old little dictionary, favorite languages. And line 13, I have a for loop, and I say for language in favorite languages dot values, print the language. So let me go ahead and print that. So the following languages have been mentioned: Python, C, Ruby, and Python. So notice how it doesn't specify the key. It just gives us the values. And we don't have to be doing any of that fancy, key and value variables. We're only using one variable because we're only dealing with the values. And we're using a very specific descriptor variable. Language is the singular of favorite languages, right? You wouldn't want to use X or I or probably V. I mean, you say, I can get away with, or call it value. Yeah, I think what happens is that most books will start you off with using the word value or V, but then they go on and say, you really should be using descriptive variable names. So what about repeats? This approach pulls all the values from the dictionary without checking for repeats. That might work fine with a small number of values, but in a poll with a large number of respondents, this will result in a very repetitive list. To see each language chosen without repetition, we use a set. That's our next one on here. And a set is a collection in which each item must be unique. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to go ahead and run it. So as you can see now, this is unique. The output is unique. So how does it accomplish that? Notice how on line 3, I have the same old dictionary, key value pairs. Then on line 11, I have a print statement. And then on line 12, I have my loop. And the key word here, or excuse me, not the key word, the method that I'm using here is the set method. Okay? So a set is a collection in which each item must be unique. You can wrap the set method, the set function, set function around a list that contains duplicate items. Okay? Python identifies unique items in the list, but builds a set from those items. Okay. And I just throw in the little print at the end to just give me a little blank line. So how can I build a set directly? All right, I don't think I've got that little demo on here, but let me see. Let me bring it in. Oh, I don't want a new file. Oh, here it is. Here it is. It was hiding over there. To build a set directly, you're going to use braces. And you can say, you know what, this looks very similar to a list. Why didn't we cover it then, right? But the idea here is that dictionaries use curly brackets, sets use them too. The big difference here is that we don't see a colon. There's no key value pairs here. So please don't get sets mixed up with dictionaries, right? So use braces and separate the elements with commas. Do not mistake sets with dictionaries. Unlike lists and dictionary, sets do not retain the items in any specific order. By that I mean, let me continue to run this. Every time I run this, look at the bottom here. See how my output changes sometimes? So isn't that kind of, I guess, different, right, or unique. So let me repeat that. Unlike lists and dictionaries, sets do not retain items in any specific order. All right? All right, so that's the end of this chapter. I do want to go over the try it yourselves, and just for the sake of doing it differently, I'm just going to go ahead and cover them using a different editor. Let's use VS Code. So this is 6.4, called Glossary 2. And it says, now that you know how to loop through a dictionary, clean up the code from exercise 6-3, page 99, by replacing your series of print calls with a loop that runs through the dictionary's key values. When you're sure your loop works, add 5 more Python terms to your glossary. When you run your program again, these new words and meanings should automatically be included in the output. So maybe we should compare the previous one. So I want to do that. Let's go ahead and look, and I know we covered this in the previous video, but let's just take a quick look at 6.3. So in 6.3 on line 1, I have the definition of my dictionary, string data. We have key value pairs, right? So the key would be, for example, the term, and then the value would be the definition of that term. And then on line 9, I assign string to the word, to the variable word. And then on line 10, I create an F string and I say word.title, and I put that's in a placeholder. And then I put in a colon, and then I go ahead and ask for the value of word, right? So the value of word, I'm looking, in this case, I'm setting it to string. So you can see here, that would give me this value right here, right? The first time through. The second time through, it would give me this. Right? Let me go ahead and run that to show that to you. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, I'm at a different program here. Yeah, I have the VS Code. So here it is. And here's my output. I'm gonna just. That's a neat little key. Let me show you that. I'm gonna clear all my output on here so that I see just the code. And let me run it again. And then I'm going to show you how I look at what I like to do in VS Code. After I run it by clicking on the green button, if I'm not seeing everything properly, I'll click on the up arrow so I can see everything. So I don't see the code now, but I can see I've got the word string, which is the key, and then followed by the value. Okay. And then when I want to go back, I'll just click on that little down arrow, and then I can see my code, right? Or or simply close the output window so I can see just code. Okay, so this was the one that we want to enhance. We want to go ahead and use a loop. Is what we want to do. We want to replace the series of print calls with a loop that runs through the dictionary's keys and values. So yeah, we're going to use the items method, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here is our glossary, our dictionary, and the problem statement said add a few more terms. So then that brings us to our loop. So in our loop, when we're using items, we've got to have 2 variable names, and we're using descriptive names. I know we could have had the word K and V here, letters, right? K and V, right? Or key and value. But using the variable names, word and definition is better, because what you end up having is you have code that's kind of like self-documenting. You don't need to try and it's easier to understand if you're more descriptive in your file names. So we're going to use a loop instead of a series of print statements, and we're using the items method. So the syntax would be the dictionary dot items. This is using object-oriented syntax. So items is a method, which is a member of the dictionaries as an object here. So what we're doing here is we're looping through the items, and we're pulling word and definition from the dictionary, and we're putting them in a formatted string on line 15. So line 15, I get word and I go ahead and attach it to the title method. So because see, all of these words are entered in lowercase. So the word will end up being printed with the capital first letter, and then I access the definition. Now, you may not be noticing this, but we are putting a colon right in here. That is going to end up showing as, you know, in your output. So let me go ahead and run that and have you take a look at it one more time. So as you can see here, a lot of times you have, when you run this, you end up having like the previous code, and it may be a little bit confusing to some of you all when you're using VS Code. A lot of times what I like to tell people is just delete the previous and run it clean, and you only have one output. See how I only have one? I don't have like the previous one on there as well. So the first thing that shows up here, and of course you can always click on this up arrow, so you can see it looks a little cleaner here to see that you've got your output more visible or easier to understand. Let's simply close it. Okay, so that's 6.4. Next one on here, 6.5. It says make a dictionary containing 3 major rivers and the country each river runs through. One key value pair might be Nile, Egypt. So use a loop to print a sentence about each river, such as the Nile runs through Egypt. That's good, right? Use a loop to print the name of each river included in the dictionary, and use a loop to print the name of each country included in the dictionary. So that's a lot of work, but let's see what we got on here. So I've got my dictionary on line 1, and key value pairs include the name of the river is the key, and then we'll the value would be the nation. Okay, well, not exactly a nation, because it's kind of like a break in this. We've got Alaska, which is a state. I mean, you know, China, Canada, United States, Egypt, you know, little break in logic. Look at the name of that river. Isn't that unique? You know, we know our author is from Alaska, and he loves to be out in the nature. I bet you he's been on that river, you know, bet you $5. But anyway, line 9 shows us that we use a loop, and we're using 2 variables, and they are descriptive. So the key is the name of the river, and it is singular. The value is the name of the country, and it is singular. The name of the dictionary is plural. So we're going to create a formatted string, and we're going to access these 2 variables in the formatted string. So we'll say the river flows through, you know, we'll say the Nile flows through Egypt, kind of thing, right? And then in this next one here, the following, oh yeah, we're going to pull out the data set. We're going to go ahead and pull out just the keys, which would be the rivers, and then we're going to pull out just the countries. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this. I promise you, I will, see how it shows the previous stuff and it gets a little confusing if you got the previous output. I like to like delete it all and just start clean. That way you don't have the previous stuff on there. Okay, so let's see what we got. So the Nile, this is our first loop. This is our second loop, which gives us just the keys, right? And then the third loop gives us just the values. Okay, excellent demonstration of accessing really all 3 ways of doing things. You know, so the first time in our first loop, we learned in this chapter utilizing the items method. Then we used the keys method, which we said is the default. We don't need to use, we don't have it on there. Then we use, but we say put it in there anyway because it makes your code easier to read. And then we use the values method to access the values in that dictionary. In this case, it would give us the country. And was Alaska a separate country? No, I think we bought, the United States bought that from Russia, right? But I don't know if it was a separate country before, so I'm not sure why it was on here. If you wanted to use a separate country, right? Texas was a separate country, wasn't it? So it probably could have, been more appropriate on that list, wouldn't you say? All right, so let's go on to our next one, 6.6. And this is based upon the program on page 97. We'll take a quick look at that in just a minute, just to make a comparison. So it's called polling. It says make a list of people who should take the favorite language poll. Includes some names that are already in the dictionary and some that are not. Okay. Loop through the list of people who should take the poll. If they have already taken the poll, print a message thanking them for responding. If they have not yet taken the poll, print a message inviting them to take the poll. And that's the last one on here. So let's take a quick look at that, and let's compare it with the other one. It builds upon the favorite languages that was on page 97. Maybe we should look at the other one first. So yeah, let's look at this one here. This uses a dictionary to look up stuff. So on line 6, I define my dictionary, and on line 14, I go ahead and use the key to look up the language. And then I use that in a formatted string. So we want to kick it up a notch by using a selection construct on here and a loop as well. So let me go ahead and run it right away. I probably should have deleted the output and then run it so you could see it clean. So we see the loop going through one time and then another time on here. Let's go ahead and drill down on it then. So I've got my dictionary defined on line 4. And on line 11, I go ahead and use the items method to go through both the keys and the values. That gives us this first part here where I get the key, So for every person on the list, it gets the name. That's not the first one, is it? Let me see here. Give me a. Yeah, I wasn't looking at the first. Yeah, this is the part. Jen's favorite language is Python. Sarah's favorite language is C. Edward's favorite language is Ruby. That's this first loop right here. So it gets each one of these names because we're dealing with the key and the values. We're using the items method. That's how this works. So we use these two, we get these two variables that could have been, yes, we know it could have been, K and V, but we want to use descriptive names that represent the qualities of the dictionary. Then I just simply print 2 blank lines, really, to separate the lists a little bit better. And then I create a list. It's really important that we understand here that I've got a dictionary on line 4, and then I've got a list on line 17. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to use a loop, and I'm going to go through every person in this list. Let's call these people coders. And I'm going to check to see if this coder is in the poll. Okay? And I'm using the keys. Brilliant. So I'll say if that person is Phil inside of favorite languages, yes. So what's going to happen? You're going to end up saying, thank you for taking the poll, Phil. Else, we're going to say, Josh is the next one. We're going to next one. Josh, is Josh on here? No. So it's going to say, it's not going to say thank you for taking the poll, right? Because this is going to be a false statement. Line 20 will fail. So the else clause, the two-way branching construct. Okay, so the outer loop here, line 19, we're going to be looping through each one of these guys, and then we're going to perform a test on each one of them and saying, hey, is this guy in the dictionary? And I'm only checking keys. You wouldn't want to be checking values, right? So if he is in the dictionary, you say thank you. If he's not, we say, Josh, what's your favorite programming language? Of course, we're not really prompting them. We're just simply going through the logic on here. So as you can see here, Phil, thank you. Josh, it says, Josh was not on the list, so we say, what's your favorite language? David was not on the list, so we say, what's your favorite programming language, etc. Okay. Well, that's the end of part 2, my friends. Hopefully you found this informative. Let's close this by looking at the cheat sheet again, one more time. Really like these cheat sheets because, well, for me, it's a way of seeing everything all on one page. Well, actually 2 pages if you want to be picky about that. So we can see up here on the upper right-hand side, here's the cheat sheet on looping through a dictionary. He says, you can loop through a dictionary in 3 ways. And we drilled down on that. You can loop through them through all the key value pairs. Yes, I remember that. All the keys, yes, and all the values. Dictionaries keep track of the order in which the key value pairs are added. If you want to process the information in a different order, you can sort the keys in your loop. We learned how to do that too. So let's, what's an example of looping through all the key value pairs? Well, here we have a real simple little dictionary, and we use a for loop with 2 variables to go ahead and get the key and the value, and we just simply do a little printing of a formatted string. Looping through all the keys, we use the keys method. So one of the things to remember here is if you want to get the keys and the values, you use the items method. If you want to work with just the keys, you use the keys method of that dictionary. If you want to work with just the values, you use the values method of the dictionary. Okay, and you're provided with, some examples of how this can be done with the sorted method here. Actually, we didn't cover reverse. Did we cover reverse? I don't remember, but this is similar to what we've learned before. That is, we passed the name of the dictionary to the sorted method. But the sorted method, we covered it before with lists, and we learned that, I believe, because I don't remember seeing reverse gets true in this chapter, but I do remember seeing it with lists. So it's a comma delimited argument, and in this particular case, the second argument specifies, or we're assigning true to reverse, and that will reverse it temporarily, right? Because it's a copy, and it spits it out. And if you were to print out the list, your dictionary again, you would see that it's unchanged. Other things that we're going to be talking about in part 3, which will be my last video on this chapter, will be nesting. I don't know if length will be covered there, but I mean that was the same thing that we covered with lists, utilizing the length function. Okay, so we'll learn about nesting. And we'll also talk about dictionary comprehensions. You all loved that so much with lists when we covered list comprehensions. We're going to come back and do it again, right? So let's leave all that goodness for our next video. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.